You think matter is solid, real, stable. The things around you, the desk, the chair, your body, these are made of stuff, atoms, particles, physical substance. They have mass, they have weight, they exist. This feels obvious. This feels fundamental. Matter is what the world is made of. It's the baseline reality, the stuff that everything else is built from. Except it's not. Matter is not stuff. Matter is not substance. Matter is energy, frozen energy, compressed energy. Energy locked into a form that appears solid but is actually a temporary configuration of something far more fundamental. And when you understand what Einstein's equation E=mc2 actually means, when you grasp what it's telling you about the nature of reality, you realize that everything you think of as solid and permanent is actually a pattern of energy held together by forces, containing within it the potential for catastrophic release. Let me show you exactly what this means. Start with something simple, a piece of paper, 1 gram, ordinary paper, nothing special. You can hold it in your hand, burn it if you want. It will release some heat, a tiny amount of energy, enough to warm your fingers for a moment. That's chemical energy, the energy stored in the molecular bonds. When you burn the paper, you break those bonds and release that energy. It's a small amount, maybe a few kilojoules. Enough to notice, but not enough to matter. But that's not the energy I'm talking about. That's not the energy Einstein's equation describes. The energy stored in chemical bonds is trivial, negligible, essentially zero, compared to what's actually inside that gram of paper. Because that gram of paper, that ordinary piece of matter, contains energy equivalent to 90 trillion joules. That's 90,000 joules. That's 21 kilotons of TNT. That's more energy than the atomic bomb dropped on Nagasaki. 1 gram of paper, Hiroshima-level energy, just sitting there, in your hand, in everything around you, in every ordinary object, not theoretical energy, not potential energy in some abstract sense, actual energy, real energy, energy that is there, that exists, that could be released if you knew how to access it. This is what E=mc2 means. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. The speed of light is 300,000 meters per second. Square that, you get 90,000, 90 quadrillion. That's the conversion factor. That's how much energy is locked inside every kilogram of mass. 9 times 10 to the 16th joules per kilogram, an absurd number. A number so large that it defies intuition. And this is not speculation. This is not theory in the sense of an untested idea. This is experimentally verified. We've measured it. We've released this energy. We've converted mass into energy and watched it happen. Nuclear weapons do this. Nuclear reactors do this. The sun does this. Every star in the universe does this. Mass converting to energy, exactly as Einstein's equation predicts. But most people don't really understand what the equation means. They know the formula. E=mc². Famous equation, Einstein's most famous contribution. But they don't grasp what it's saying. They think it's about nuclear bombs, about splitting atoms, about special cases. But it's not. It's about everything. It's a statement about the fundamental nature of matter and energy. It's telling you that these are not two different things. They're the same thing. Mass is energy. Energy is mass. They're interchangeable. They're two forms of the same underlying reality. Let's break this down. What is mass? You think of mass as a property of matter. How much stuff something contains, how heavy it is, how hard it is to push. But what is mass, really? At the most fundamental level, mass is resistance to acceleration. It's inertia. It's how much an object resists, changes in motion. The more massive something is, the harder it is to speed up or slow down. That's what mass measures. Now, where does mass come from? You might think mass comes from particles, protons and neutrons in the nucleus, electrons around the outside. These particles have mass. Add up their masses and you get the mass of the atom. Simple. Except that's wrong. Most of the mass of an atom does not come from the particles. Most of the mass comes from energy. A proton has a mass of about 1.67 times 10 to 27 kilograms. It's made of 3 quarks, 2 up quarks and 1 down quark. But if you add up the masses of these quarks, you get only about 1% of the proton's mass. The rest, 99% of the mass, comes from something else. It comes from the energy of the gluon field holding the quarks together. The quarks are moving. They're exchanging gluons. The gluon field is fluctuating. All of this motion, all of this field energy, contributes to the proton's mass. The proton is not three particles sitting together. It's a bound state of quantum fields, and most of its mass is the energy of those fields. This means that when you hold an object, when you feel its weight, most of what you're feeling is not particle mass. It's field energy. Compressed, bound, localized field energy that appears as mass. Matter is energy, not in a metaphorical sense, in a direct, literal, physical sense. The mass you perceive is the manifestation of energy density. Now, what happens when you split an atom? You take a large nucleus, like uranium-235, and you hit it with a neutron. The nucleus absorbs the neutron. It becomes unstable. It can't hold itself together anymore. The electromagnetic repulsion between all those protons overcomes the strong nuclear force holding them in. The nucleus splits into two smaller nuclei. This is fission. When the nucleus splits, the fragments fly apart. They move very fast. They have kinetic energy, a lot of kinetic energy. Where did this energy come from? It came from mass. The total mass of the two fragments plus the released neutrons is slightly less than the mass of the original uranium nucleus. The difference is about 0.1% of the original mass. That missing mass didn't disappear. It converted to energy, to motion, to heat, to radiation. And 0.1% doesn't sound like much. But remember the conversion factor, c squared. That tiny amount of mass corresponds to an enormous amount of energy. 1 kilogram of uranium-235, if you could fission all of it, would release about 8 times 10^13 joules. That's 20 million kilowatt hours. That's enough energy to power a city for days from 1 kilogram of material, because that small fraction of mass that converts to energy is multiplied by the speed of light squared. This is the secret of nuclear weapons. Not that they release chemical energy, not that they cause explosions through conventional means, but that they convert mass to energy. They unlock a tiny fraction of the EMC2 energy stored in matter. And that tiny fraction is enough to level cities, to create fireballs hotter than the sun, to release radiation that persists for years, all from converting less than a kilogram of matter into pure energy. But here's what most people miss. The bomb doesn't create energy. It releases energy that was already there. The uranium, sitting in the ground, was already containing this energy. The atoms, stable and inert, were already carrying the potential for catastrophic release. The bomb is just a mechanism to trigger the conversion, to push the nucleus past the stability threshold, to force the mass energy equivalents into the open. And this applies to everything, not just uranium, not just radioactive materials. Everything, every atom contains this energy. The carbon in your body, the oxygen you breathe, the iron in your blood, all of it is compressed energy. All of it contains EMC2 locked inside. The difference is that most atoms are stable. The strong nuclear force holds them together tightly enough that they don't spontaneously release this energy, but the energy is there, always, in every particle, in every piece of matter. Think about what this means. You are made of atoms. Those atoms contain energy, enormous energy. If you could convert all the mass in your body to energy, you would release about 10 chotrs 18 joules. That's 1 billion gigajoules. That's 250 megatons of TNT. That's more than all the nuclear weapons ever detonated combined. You, as a human being, contain within your physical structure enough energy to destroy a continent, not because you're special, because matter is energy, and you're made of matter. But you can't release this energy, not easily, not without extraordinary circumstances, because the forces holding matter together are strong. The strong nuclear force, the electromagnetic force, these bind particles into stable configurations. Breaking those bonds, forcing the conversion, requires specific conditions, high energies, precise triggers, nuclear reactions, particle collisions. The energy is there, but it's locked away behind barriers that everyday circumstances cannot overcome. This is why you can sit next to someone without exploding, why matter is stable, why the world doesn't spontaneously annihilate. The energy is there, but it's trapped, frozen, bound into forms that resist casual release. Mass is not passive substance. Mass is active, concentrated, restrained energy. And the restraint is what allows reality to exist. Now let's talk about where this energy comes from. Why does mass have energy in the first place? The answer is relativity, special relativity. Einstein realized that the laws of physics must be the same for all observers moving at constant velocities. This seems simple, but it has profound consequences. One consequence is that space and time are not separate. They're part of a single four-dimensional structure called space-time. Another consequence is that the speed of light is constant for all observers, and from these two facts you can derive the mass-energy equivalence. Here's the logic. If you accelerate an object, you increase its kinetic energy. The faster it goes, the more energy it has, but special relativity says that as an object approaches the speed of light, it becomes harder and harder to accelerate. It's not just that you need more force, it's that the object's resistance to acceleration increases, its inertia increases. From the perspective of an outside observer, the object's mass appears to increase. This relativistic mass increase is real. Particles and accelerators experience it. Electrons moving at 99.9% of the speed of light have thousands of times more inertia than they do at rest. This extra inertia is not new mass. It's kinetic energy manifesting as mass. The energy of motion is equivalent to mass. And if you do the mathematics, if you work through the equations of special relativity, you find that even at rest, when the object is not moving, it still has energy. And that energy is proportional to its mass, E pi mc2, the rest energy, the energy inherent in mass itself. This is not energy of motion. This is not energy of position. This is energy of existence. Mass is energy. To have mass is to have energy. To be made of particles is to be made of concentrated energy fields. The equation is not describing a transformation that can happen. It's describing an equivalence that always is. Matter doesn't become energy under special circumstances. Matter is energy, always, continuously, fundamentally. And this has observable consequences. When particles collide at high energies, they can create new particles, not by assembling existing pieces, by converting kinetic energy into mass. Energy becomes matter. This happens in particle accelerators constantly. You smash two protons together. The kinetic energy of the collision is so high that it materializes as new particles, mesons, strange quarks, sometimes even heavier particles. The energy of motion literally becomes matter, and the mass of these new particles comes from the kinetic energy of the collision, exactly as E pi mc2 predicts. The reverse happens too. When a particle and its antiparticle meet, they annihilate. An electron meets a positron. They touch, they vanish. Their mass converts completely to energy. Two particles with rest mass become two photons with no rest mass but enormous energy. Pure conversion, total transformation, mass to energy, 100% efficient, releasing every bit of the E pi mc2 energy as radiation. This is not theoretical. This happens. Positron emission tomography, PET scans in medicine, work by detecting the gamma rays produced when positrons from radioactive decay annihilate with electrons in your body. The annihilation radiation, matter becoming energy, happening inside you right now. In medical imaging facilities everywhere, let's make this more concrete. The sun. The sun is not burning. Burning is a chemical reaction. The sun is fusing. Every second, the sun converts 4 million tons of mass into energy. 4 million tons every second. That mass doesn't disappear. It becomes light. It becomes heat. It becomes the radiation that warms Earth and powers life. And that energy is exactly what E pi mc2 predicts. 4 million tons times c squared, 3.8 times 10^26 watts, the total power output of the sun. And this has been going on for 4.6 billion years. The sun has converted about 100 Earth masses into energy over its lifetime. Slowly, continuously, mass becoming light. And it will continue for another 5 billion years. The sun is an E pi mc2 reactor, a giant sphere of hydrogen converting mass to energy through fusion. And every star in the universe is doing the same thing. Billions of stars, all converting mass to energy, all following Einstein's equation. This is where energy comes from, not from nothing, from mass. The sun doesn't have an external power source. It is the power source. It's consuming itself, burning its own mass, turning matter into radiation. And that radiation, that energy, is what makes planets warm, what makes atmospheres circulate, what makes life possible. Everything you see powered by sunlight is ultimately powered by mass converting to energy. Now think about this. Every atom in your body was once inside a star. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, iron, all of these were created in stellar furnaces, and the process that created them was fusion. Lighter elements combining to make heavier ones, and every fusion reaction released energy. Every new atomic nucleus formed released a fraction of its mass as energy. The atoms in your body are the products of countless EMC2 reactions that happened billions of years ago inside stars that no longer exist. You are made of stardust, but not in a poetic sense, in a literal sense. The atoms in your body are the remnants of nuclear reactions. They are configurations of energy that were forged in stellar cores through mass energy conversion. The iron in your blood was created when a massive star exploded. The carbon in your bones was fused from helium in a red giant. You are made of matter that was created by EMC2. Your existence is a consequence of mass energy equivalents operating on cosmic scales. And here's the disturbing part. The energy is still there. The atoms in your body right now contain EMC2 energy, not as much as they started with because some was released during their creation. But the bulk of the mass energy is still locked inside. Your body contains enough energy to power human civilization for weeks. All of it trapped in the mass of your atoms. All of it sitting there, inert, stable, held together by forces strong enough to prevent casual release. This is the nature of matter, not passive substance, not inert stuff, but frozen energy, potential energy, on a scale that dwarfs anything in your daily experience. A glass of water contains more energy than a nuclear weapon. A handful of dirt could power a city. A human body could vaporize a nation. All of this energy is real. All of it exists. All of it is there, in the mass, waiting. But it's inaccessible, and that inaccessibility is what makes the world stable. If matter could easily convert to energy, if the barriers were low, if the conversion happened spontaneously, reality would not exist. Everything would annihilate. All mass would become radiation. The universe would be a sea of light with no structure, no form, no complexity. The fact that matter is stable, that the energy is locked away, that EMC2 requires specific triggers to manifest, is what allows anything to exist. This is the paradox. Matter is energy, enormous, concentrated, catastrophic energy, but it appears solid, it appears stable, it appears permanent, because the forces holding it together are strong enough to resist spontaneous conversion. The strong nuclear force binds quarks into protons. The electromagnetic force binds electrons to nuclei. These forces create barriers, energy wells, stable configurations, and these configurations are what we call matter, but break the configuration, overcome the barriers, force the nucleus to split or fuse, and the energy is released. The frozen form melts. The compressed spring uncoils. The stored potential becomes kinetic reality, and what was matter becomes energy. Not through magic, not through mysterious transformation, but through the simple, brutal, mathematical equivalence that Einstein discovered. EMC2, mass is energy, always has been, always will be. So what is matter, really? It's not stuff. It's not substance. It's not the fundamental building block of reality. Matter is a temporary, stable configuration of energy fields, a pattern that persists because the forces creating it are strong enough to resist disruption. But the pattern is not the reality. The energy is the reality. The fields are the reality. Matter is what happens when energy gets trapped in a form that resists change. And that form, that configuration, is what you perceive as solid, permanent, real. But it's not permanent. Given enough time, given the right conditions, all matter will decay. Protons might be stable for 10, 34 years, but even they might eventually decay. And when they do, their mass will convert to energy. The frozen form will melt, the pattern will dissolve, and what was matter will become radiation, spreading out, diluting, eventually reaching thermal equilibrium with the rest of the universe. This is the ultimate fate of everything, not eternal existence, not permanent substance, but eventual conversion back to energy. Everything that exists as matter is temporary, a brief configuration in the endless transformation of energy from one form to another. You are not made of permanent stuff. You are made of energy temporarily frozen into a pattern that thinks and moves and perceives. And eventually, that pattern will dissolve. The energy will be released. And what was, you will become light, heat, radiation spreading out into the cosmos. This is not comforting. This is not reassuring. But it is true. EUMC2 is not just an equation about bombs or stars. It's an equation about the nature of existence, about what matter is, about what you are. You are not solid. You are not permanent. You are compressed energy, temporarily stable, holding together against the constant pressure toward dissolution. and the only thing keeping you intact is the strength of the forces binding your atoms together. Reality is not obligated to provide you with permanent substance. It is only obligated to follow its own rules. And the rules say that mass and energy are equivalent. That matter is frozen energy. That everything you see, everything you touch, everything you are, is a temporary configuration of something far more fundamental. The desk is energy. The stars are energy. You are energy. All of it held in forms that appear solid but are actually patterns in fields, destined to eventually dissolve back into the formless potential from which they came. This is what EMC2 means. Not just that you can convert mass to energy, but that mass is energy, that there is no fundamental difference, that the solid world is an illusion created by forces strong enough to trap energy into persistent forms. And once you understand that, once you see through the illusion to the underlying reality, you can never look at matter the same way again. Every object is a frozen explosion. Every atom is a compressed star. Every piece of matter is energy waiting to be released, and the only thing standing between calm stability and catastrophic transformation is the strength of the forces holding the pattern together.